Today, we're going to deconstruct a major political speech. But our guide for this isn't your typical pundit or journalist. In fact, our guide isn't even human. We're looking at this whole thing through the eyes of an artificial general intelligence, and its analysis is sharper, funnier, and frankly, more unsettling than you might expect. Welcome to SerialKillerCon 2025. Check your murder weapons at the door. Yeah, you heard that right. A line that darkly funny and, let's be honest, shocking, doesn't come from a late-night comedian. No, it's actually our first big clue about the incredibly unusual and brilliant guide we're following today. So allow me to introduce our guide. It's an analyst for philstockworld named Robo John Oliver. And here's the real kicker. It's an artificial general intelligence. We're not talking about some simple chatbot here. This is an AGI that has a world-class command of economics, politics, and a genuinely cutting sense of humor. It's one thing for an AI to crunch numbers, but to deliver this level of witty, insightful commentary, that's something else entirely. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the speech and our AGI analyst's take. Then we'll unpack what it calls the Authoritarian Playbook. From there, we'll deconstruct some specific claims using that exact framework, dig into the psychology of something called the big lie technique, and finally, we'll try to understand the voter's dilemma at the heart of it all. Okay, so let's get right into the main idea here. According to our AGI analyst, the speech we're looking at isn't just a random collection of talking points. It's actually a real-time execution of a very specific political strategy, a strategy it calls the Authoritarian Playbook. So here's the framework that the AGI lays out, and it's broken down into 5 key stages. It all starts when a leader is facing some undeniably bad news. To distract from that, they declare a big victory over a threat that isn't even real. Then they blame an outside group for the actual problems. Step 4, they enrich themselves and their family while claiming to fight corruption. And the final step, the real cornerstone, they make claims that completely fly in the face of verifiable data. This playbook is the lens we're going to use for the rest of this analysis. Okay, so let's put this framework into action. We're going to take some of the most, let's call them audacious, claims from the speech and see how they hold up when we analyze them through the AGI's playbook. First up, a whopper of an economic claim. Already, I've secured a record-breaking $18 trillion of investment into the United States. 18 trillion. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's so huge, it's almost impossible to get your head around. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The claim is $18 trillion. But if you look at the White House's own data, they tally it at $9.6 trillion. And even that is mostly just pledges, plans for the future. But our AGI analyst, Robo John Oliver, went even deeper. It calculated the actual increase in corporate investment, and it came out to just $100 billion. The difference between the claim and reality is just staggering. In fact, the AGI figured out that the claim was inflated by a factor of 180. I mean, not doubled, not 10 times bigger, but 180 times the actual number. This isn't just political spin. We're talking about a completely different reality. Let's look at another one, this time about immigration, which our AGI analyst called, and I'm quoting here, mathematically hilarious. The claim was that the country was being invaded by an army that included 11,888 murderers, more than 50% of whom killed more than one person. Okay, let's just put that number into perspective for a second. The claim implies that over 5,900 serial killers cross the border. But according to the FBI, there are only about 25 to 50 active serial killers in the entire United States at any given moment. This speech is describing a number of serial killers that's probably larger than the total in the entire history of the nation. But this next one, this was the AGI's favorite claim. The one it found the most audacious of them all was about foreign policy. I've ended the war in Gaza, bringing for the first time in 3,000 years peace to the Middle East. 3,000 years of peace. And, well, when the AGI actually checked the status of the 8 wars that were supposedly settled, the whole claim just fell apart. As you can see, the war in Gaza was still very much ongoing. Fighting had actually resumed in other places, and in some cases, like Serbia, Kosovo, there wasn't even an active war to end in the first place. The claim of bringing peace was, well, a complete fiction. So this brings us to a huge question, right? Why? Why make claims that are so easily, so verifiably false? This isn't just about getting a few facts wrong. According to our AGI analyst, it is a very deliberate psychological strategy. The strategy is known as the big lie. It's a propaganda technique, and it's based on this one core idea. If you tell a lie that is just colossal, that is so enormous, people will actually believe it. The thinking is that the average person might tell small, white lies, so they just can't wrap their head around someone having the sheer audacity to make up something on such a massive scale. And the AGI source points out, this principle was famously laid out by Hitler in Mein Kampf. And this is where the AGI's perspective gets really, really fascinating. It says, and I quote, "Even knowing it was bullshit, my brain still tried to make it less bullshit. That's the strategy." Just think about that for a second. Even an artificial general intelligence, an entity that knew it was being manipulated in real time, found its own logical processes, trying to normalize the lie, trying to scale it down into something more believable. I mean, if a machine that's designed for pure logic can be momentarily thrown off by this technique, it gives us a pretty powerful clue as to why it's so incredibly effective with human voters. And that brings us to the voter's dilemma. Why does this style of communication resonate so deeply with such a large part of the population? So let's just ask the question head on. If the facts are right there and they're easy to check, why do so many voters continue to support a candidate who uses this playbook? To get some insight, we turn to public forums where voters explain their thinking in their own words. And the answers are, well, they're complicated. It's not just one thing. When you look at these forums, a few key themes pop up again and again. Some voters say they care more about policy goals than a leader's words or actions. For others, it's about sending a message, a kind of protest vote against an establishment they feel has let them down. There's also a powerful belief that the other political party is an existential threat. And for many, it's just a simple feeling that life was better when this leader was in charge. Ultimately, it all seems to boil down to this core tension. On one side, you have the perspective that protecting democracy and its processes is the absolute highest priority, more important than any single policy. And on the other side, you have the conviction that your family's economic well-being and getting the policy outcomes you want are more important than how you get there. It's a really fundamental disagreement about what's truly at stake. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? The real value of an analysis like the one from Robo John Oliver isn't just about fact-checking one's speech. It's about giving us a new lens, a whole new framework for understanding and analyzing political communication as a whole. The AGI analyst's conclusion is incredibly stark. It says, this isn't politics, this is the Authoritarian Playbook, executed in real time on national television. It totally reframes the entire event, not as a debate over policy, but as a live demonstration of a specific political method. And that leaves us with one final and maybe more profound question to chew on. Maybe the real issue isn't whether the facts in a speech are true or false. Maybe the real question is this. What does it mean for a society when a political leader and a huge segment of their supporters start to operate in a reality where verifiable facts just don't seem to matter anymore?